It's the second part of a two-parter where we're looking at the downfall of Hasbro, a company which is in risk and on the verge, perhaps, of sinking down below viability. It's a shame, it really is. Today, we're not going to be looking at the Disney effect. Rather, we'll look at the impact that Hasbro had on itself. We're here to tell you that the giant toy maker made some really, really dumb decisions, and it turns out that in yet another case, woke did indeed go broke, and that is no joke when it comes to Hasbro. Hello folks, they're calling it Hasbroke, but we're not here to make light of the situation because a huge key component of entertainment, a major toy manufacturer, could go down the tubes very soon. And that largely has to do with having adopted DEI and ESG components, going full woke, as has been the case with so many of these situations. Companies like Disney, they're so big that it takes a very long time for their downfall, but if you take a look at it, you think about it. Look where Marvel was in 2019, and look what adopting those kinds of themes did to that franchise in just 4 or 5 years. It went from being the biggest and the bestest, the golden goose of Disney, to now the Marvels is potentially the biggest flop of all time in cinematic history. Well, that's no good. And when you're a smaller company like Hasbro, well, it doesn't take so long to slide down into a position where you can't come back. That seems to be exactly what happened. We have some toy experts who are joining us right now to lead us through what happened to Hasbro and what might be on the horizon. If you love toys, if you love action figures, if you're into collectibles, this is the video for you.
Well, if I can just jump in on that, the first thing I want to say is that Hasbro selling off E1 Entertainment, you didn't mention how much they purchased it for. Back in 2019, they paid $4 billion in cash for it.
$4 billion.
Yes, $4 billion, the price of Lucasfilm, essentially. And so you're seeing to buy something for $4 billion and sell it for $375 million 4 years later, or 5 years later, rather, that does not strike me as a company that's in a good financial state.
Let's say that again, Tommy, because it's so staggering that the folks out there may not understand. And Tommy, I also want to say that when we say that number again, when we say it, folks, what this means is that they had to take this level of loss to pay off a debt. So in other words, they could not wait and try to redeem this loss. Either that, or they thought that the loss was only going to gain steam and go down even farther in terms of value. Tommy, you're saying that this aspect of Hasbro was purchased at $4 billion, so essentially at the cost of Lucasfilm, and sold for $375 million, correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That's greater than an 8 times reduction in value.
It is.
Continue.
It is unbelievable. And I mean, part of the reason they had purchased it originally, it was a Canadian company, so Canada proud, and it featured I think PJ Masks and Peppa Pig as part of its IP. But part of the reason they had bought it was because they were jumping a little bit late into the game into the whole shared universe concept, and so they wanted to take their own IPs like Transformers, G.I. Joe, Mask. I don't know if anyone remembers those with the transforming cars, and create like a bit of a cinematic universe for it, and it just never worked. It never caught on. The G.I. Joe movies didn't do very well. Snake Eyes, the most recent one that they had, bombed. The Transformers movies were only basically doing well thanks to Michael Bay, and when he left, they kind of went down the gutter too. And so and on the TV side, on the animation side, all of their animated attempts have just not been going well. And Jonas has done a really great Everything Woke about Transformers Earthrise, Earthspark, which is just abysmal. So they were never able to really do that. The only speck of hope they have going on right now is the comic book side of things, where they've had Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead, take over the G.I. Joe Transformers franchises, and he's slowly building something up there. And so, in a few years, there might be something to mine. But they had this entertainment company, and they flubbed it. They weren't able to do anything with it. And so ultimately they had to sell it for $375 million. Like that type of loss is incredible. But more to the point though, and what Jeff was saying, is that their own brands, while not doing great, are doing okay. Transformers is still, hanging in there. People are still buying it, and it's mainly the adult collectors now. A couple of years back, the conversation was all about how it was about kids buying these toys. Adult collectors were just a very, very fringe minority. They didn't matter anymore. And in every single yearly statement from Hasbro, more and more the emphasis on the adult collector as the primary purchaser of these products, like their focus kept getting bigger and bigger. And
Tommy,
so,
let me insert an idea here, and you tell me what you think about it. I think that as the quality of the product diminishes, the need to lean onto adult collectors increases. I think we've watched that with Star Wars. I think we watched it with Marvel. You're talking about with Transformers. I think there's a direct correlation.
100%, 100%. And they, the problem is that the quality of their product is decreasing. They are not putting out proper media to capture the next generations. Like there has been a generational miss on this, and that's not just Hasbro, that's Disney too, obviously, with Star Wars and Marvel. And they don't have the capacity, they don't have the vehicle, the medium through which to sell their product. And so it's falling more and more onto collectors like Jeff, like myself, who have these fond memories of the 80s, Transformers, GI Joe, Star Wars, and all that, to pick up that slack. But we're eventually gonna, pass away. We're gonna stop. We have real lives. We have
Don't get in a hurry, Tommy.
Yeah, and so it's not a sustainable strategy by any means.
Well,
Now,
one thing I do want to add here, by the way, this sale of E1 has been in the works for a little bit of time, and there have been other things that have happened in there that have not gone exactly Hasbro's way. Of course, like we're all aware, I think, of the Wizards of the Coast situation where they got the rights to the Lord of the Rings, and man, they screwed that up in a way that it was almost impossible to screw up a Lord of the Rings license in the way that they did. Artwork was great, but they changed the races of almost everyone involved. And I'm not saying they made Aragorn into an elf. They all of a sudden take this English folklore that's based on a pretty light-skinned culture, and then all of a sudden, that
would never fly with Wakanda, would it? The inverse of that would never fly with Wakanda. I want to go to culture, though. Culture, my thought on this, and after your thoughts, I'm going to show the folks out there how the media is spinning this, because the spinach has already begun. All right, not the spinach like Popeye, but the spinach that the drive-bys do. Culture, my thought is that they believed that they could subsidize some of these risky behaviors with the Disney brands that were going to be solid, that they were evergreen, golden gooses, golden geese, I suppose, that would keep them afloat no matter. And then they could take these risks with the multiverse of their own brands. That didn't happen.
No, there's a lot going on behind the scenes at Hasbro. Hasbro, I've been covering the story for, 2 years, I would say at this point. I mean, maybe longer, maybe it's up to 4 years. You lost the CEO to cancer, going back to October of 2021. He had an entirely other plan and direction for the company.
Can we just say that we hate the C word here?
Yeah. And he passed away just far too quickly. But they lost a direction in that. And the guy they brought in is really not a talented or gifted leader. And of course, they had to succumb to the financing mechanisms that make you adhere to the certain three-letter devil out there that's going to kill a lot of corporations. I would say that the fact that they were looking to rely on Disney long term under this new leader was a bad plan, because you don't have to go that far back to recognize that Disney was unaware of what they could sell and what they couldn't sell going back to the first Frozen movie. They weren't prepared for that, and they certainly weren't prepared for Grogu. You have all of these things that kind of culminated to where we are now. So if you look at the numbers and you're starting to hear whispers of bankruptcy, I'd say that's a likely outcome. And it's going to happen.
That's where we are right now. And I actually, Culture, I changed the title to this video. We were much more blunt about the chance of bankruptcy. I wanted to soften it just a bit for reasons outside of what we might think is likely. But
sure.
I'm with you. My thought here is that bankruptcy for Hasbro is probably the most likely outcome.
I think the same time next year, or I guess, it would be the early part of 2025, they will be insolvent, or approaching it, and they will have to, or may already have filed bankruptcy. I don't see another outcome. There's all kinds of reasons for this, but they made some very bad decisions, and Tommy was right on top of some very bad decisions when it came to their entertainment brand. The very last thing they should have done was sell off that. But as you pointed out, Pro, I don't think that they had any other choice but to sell E1 Entertainment. And again, I've been talking about that specific story for 2 years, because when that first started to leak out there that they were considering that, I'm like, of course they're suffering.
Right, and you don't want to sell low. They sold low. Real quick, let me show you what the media is using as the excuse for all of this, because we can't blame woke, which is, by the way, that woke is what infected all of the Hasbro brands that we've been talking about. That was the risky multiverse concept, was to take these into a woke direction. We've all reported on it. Jonas reported on it with his Everything Woke About channel. And then at the same time, woke infected Star Wars. It infected Marvel. That's how we got the MCU. That's how we got the Phase 5 dive. That's how we got the spinoff trilogy. And all of those, it created everything. Jeff, in just a moment, I want to ask you about the impact on entertainment and the industry if Hasbro indeed goes bankrupt. But before we do, this out of Reuters. You can't get more mainstream than Reuters. Richard Naidu is the author here. Toy manufacturers shift from China is no child's play. Again, January 15th, yesterday. So, folks, pay attention to when they put these articles out. This is the narrative that you're supposed to believe. Toy makers grappling with surging costs in China are finding no easy options when it comes to shifting production to cheaper centers elsewhere. 6 years ago, monopoly maker Hasbro approached Indian durable goods and aerospace supplier Aegis to subcontract. They said, if you can get into toy manufacturing now, we're looking to shift millions of dollars worth of product from China to India. We said, as long as we can get at least about $100 million of business in the next few years, we can definitely invest in it. Fast forward to today, and Aegis, I'm assuming that's the pronunciation, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, makes dozens of types of toys for Hasbro and others, including Spin Master, in two 350,000 square foot facilities in Belgium, India. But Hedge and other manufacturers acknowledge that India and other countries cannot match China for efficiency, limiting companies' efforts to shift to lower cost bases and raising the risk of higher toy prices in the future if the bulk of production remains in China. Now, what does this mean? Well, they're trying to tell us that the woes that Hasbro is about to go through are squarely on their decision to get out of China and to diversify their supply chains. That's what's killing them, not Disney.
Reuters in the bag for a specific country that thinks they, have, a hold over other countries in their region, and we'll just say that might be China. So let's just start there from where they report everything that they report. The problem is that most of the manufacturing business, the people that are involved in it, having other people manufacture their goods for them so that they can market and sell them, they understand that China is going to be a very tumultuous and risky business center for quite some period of time going forward. A lot of them are moving out of there, not just for geopolitical reasons, but because, they're going through a recession or more difficult financial period than most of us imagine and most people realize is going on in China. They're about to have some significant segments of their economy come down crashing very soon. Manufacturing is one of them. The number of orders in China have gone down dramatically. A lot of American businesses, and this was covered in the AP not that long ago, a lot of American businesses are pulling out of China and not putting additional investment dollars in China,
probably a smart move considering the climate.
Yes, looking for other places to go. And obviously with unrest globally, as we're starting to see it spread because of lack of leadership in many of the larger countries in the world, this is always going to be the case. You have to reprioritize where you're making things and where you're selling things in order to mitigate your risk, because you can see the risks in other places. So China losing manufacturing isn't a surprise to anybody. The bigger surprise to me was Elon investing there, but that's an entirely other conversation.
But
Jeff, what happens if Hasbro goes bankrupt? What happens to what you've been covering now? I mean, you have, no one on YouTube has covered this to the level and to the extent you have. What happens if the sad state of Hasbro comes to its full fruition?
Oh, it's an easy answer. Todd McFarlane and his toy company buys up licenses at a cheaper rate because he already has the saturation. He's in every store with his DC stuff. He has Warner Brothers contracts. It's not really out of the extra. It's not a really big stretch to see that the guy that makes DC toys will make Marvel toys. And I mean, if there's money in it, somebody will pick up the Star Wars license, and you'll probably get a new size of figure. They'll attempt to get back the people like us that have the expendable income.
Right.
But it's the fact that Hasbro might lose out and go away, which I really don't see happening completely, because they have a lot of like G.I. Joe and Transformers do make money, and they have their other stuff too, and they have their board games.
DnD.
And I know things go digital, yeah, D&D. But I noticed, I went to Ollie's the other day to make some new stuff. They have a new set of D&D out at Ollie's. It's like 90% off. Like, it's an actual D&D branded set. It's not like some offshoot stuff.
Real quick, Jeff, if you'll entertain a question. You firmly believe in McFarlane because he's a brand in and of himself, right? If he's out there picking up these licenses and manufacturing these things, he's probably a better bet, right?
Let me answer that in an honest way. I think he's a better bet because he's able to do stuff with Batman and bigger IPs already. I don't think he's going to make a better product because I don't think his products are as good as his fans think they are. They're shitty action figures. They're really bad. Yeah, I don't buy them because they suck. He reuses parts. He's very lazy. The paint jobs are crap. People make excuses. They don't have the license for the actors' likenesses. That's why Michael Keaton Batman doesn't look like Michael Keaton Batman, but every other one does. It's bullshit. It's a really weird cult over there at McFarlane Toys. But he has the ability and the business size to do it. So that's why I threw him in there. Because look at Spin Masters. Nobody cares about them. The people that do those little offshoot was it Funko? They can't afford to do it because their reaction toys don't sell.
Right. So I'll say at this point, I mean, the big names in the space, Spin Master, Moose Toys, things like that, I don't think they're big enough to absorb a company like Hasbro. Mattel is probably so large that they would have an antitrust issue if they tried to take on any aspect. Jakks Pacific is getting up there, and the Lego Group would be probably the only company I can think of that has the capital and the sway that they would actually be able to absorb a company like Hasbro. But they're a very focused company, so
I don't think
creates
Lego
a huge
wants them.
question here.
Oh no!
What I'd like to say though is that we're starting to see Hasbro farming out their IPs, their unique IPs out in various licensing deals. So they've been doing this for a while with Transformers. The rule is that any non-Hasbro company that wants to make Optimus Prime, it has to be a figure that cannot transform. Only Hasbro can do that. Will that change in the future? It's hard to say. They've also licensed out recently their 3 3/4-inch G.I. Joe figures to a company called Haya Toys out in China. And then they've also licensed out part of their Marvel brand to McFarlane already. So this might almost be them testing the waters a little bit, and I'm curious to see where that goes. But just jumping back to the article in Reuters really quickly, Pro, there was something disingenuous in there. And I wanted to note that Hasbro, back in 2019, the summer of 2019, they already outsourced a significant amount of their product to Vietnam. That's when the Transformers toys, I think G.I. Joe as well, that's when they shifted the factories over there. And that's where a lot of their product is coming from. So if they're saying that even Vietnam is too expensive for them and they have to ship to India now or create these products in India, that's kind of mystifying to me.
I think it's all they've got left. I mean, they have to explain this away in a way that does not throw any criticism or disparagement onto what we've seen over the past many years of going woke. Go woke, go broke. This will be the biggest sign of that. And so they need to preemptively switch the narrative to something different than go woke, go broke. Because Hasbro, as we've said now, it looks like, we can't say definitively, but Hasbro is heading for actual real bankruptcy, and not the kind of bankruptcy that the drive-bys report on when they talk about Warner Brothers, and then 5 days later, oh wait, Warner Brothers just signed on Tom Cruise. I guess they're not going bankrupt after all. Maybe we shouldn't have used this wonky, crazy little obscure tool out of San Francisco and ran with it because it was great clickbait. But that's where we are.
Can I just suggest that right now Hasbro's future rests in their ability to sell playing card games?
Yeah,
sure. You absolutely can say that.
Yeah. I think the fact that they were exposed for disposing of many cars to try to artificially increase their long-term value also speaks to the fact that they're pretty desperate going forward.
And put the stamp of excellence on it. We're done. It's a wrap. It's over. Folks, the only thing left to do, of course, is that bow. And the bow that it is, it's when you click like, share, subscribe, and stick it to the algorithms. Click it. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Join in the conversation. Do you have insights into what's going on? Do you disagree? Do you agree? We'd love to hear you either way. Be a critic, critique away. Folks, that's the cool part of free speech and free discourse. We'd love to know your opinion. And as always, we wrap this up with a happy note. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.